If you are selected, or when I say you, I mean the applicant, foreign national applicant, are selected, then you move on to step number two. Okay, so the old way of doing things is that several years ago, they more formally called it a lottery. I still think it's a lottery in the sense that it's completely random. So even though you've done some your own vetting, your own interview process, and you think you could have the best applicant and you register them, they might not get selected. And the US government is not in the business of vetting the applicants as a candidate. And that's great. Thank goodness, because we probably can't depend on the government for a lot of things, as you can imagine. If you're thinking, well, I don't know, do I have to pay all the fees? I don't know if they're going to get selected. Well, here's tip number two is that it actually only costs $10 for H1B registration that you would pay to Department of Homeland Security. Okay. And that could be done online. Let's say you find out March 31st, one of your recruited candidates has been selected, then wonderful. But then you have to scramble and find a law firm who has a capacity to assist you. All right, for the second step, because the reason I suggest having a professional assist you is that because I've heard of some companies do it on their own. Sure, of course, many have been successful, but many others have not, and it could have been prevented. The denial letter could have been prevented. So imagine if your workforce or your HR, your recruitment team, and other team members currently on staff are depending on several more people to be added on. You do all this work, you pay all these fees to the government, and then they get a denial letter. So here's tip number three. You don't have to have a degree. The candidate does not have to have a degree in America as long as it's for bachelor's. Now, when you do the registration on online, as step number one, they have a little box that says, do you want to go select for the exemption, okay, for the basically the 66,000 H1B visas based on bachelor's degree. There's an extra 20,000 based on masters. Now, people who have a master's can also dip into the 66,000. So if you have a candidate that has a master's degree that's outside America, then unfortunately that does not count. The master's degree does have to be in the US. So if you do check off master's exemption, but the degree is not from America, then you have to, make sure you uncheck that. So that's an example why having a professional can help, because, if you're a small, especially if you're a small business, well, actually, whether you're small, big, mid, or large, you depend on someone in HR to do this, and they don't, they don't know these little nuances in the law, because of course they're not necessarily going to give you a disclaimer on the platform and say, by the way, don't select this because if your candidate has a degree from outside America. But again, if they have a bachelor's degree, then yes, bachelor's degree that's outside America, then that still counts. You can still register that person. Now, bonus tip here is that there is something called prevailing wage determination. You don't have to formally go through the entire determination in terms of filing an application. You could, but that's not necessary. So we've actually had to tell some employers when they try to do it on their own, and that when they did it on their own, step number one, what they thought was step number one to do submit the prevailing wage, we saved them a lot of time, because otherwise they probably would have waited another 3 or 4 months, and that time is critical for your workforce, for your team, and I completely understand that. You don't want to necessarily extend an offer to someone when you don't know what that prevailing wage is. So think of prevailing wage as cost of living adjustment, COLA. Okay. So, right, everyone knows if the job site, the work location, or that person lives in San Francisco or New York City, that cost of living adjustment, the wage is going to be higher than if the job site was in Texas. So this the government actually, the Department of Labor considers that, and they consider inflation, by the way. So it's always, I think, important, especially these days post pandemic, that you consult with an attorney to review that. So we do that as a courtesy to check out what the prevailing wage is for you and your employee or your candidate, so that you feel more comfortable in extending an offer that's above the prevailing wage. Now, basically, long story short, Congress has set up this as a requirement so that you don't under no employer on accident undercuts any wages. All right. So that protects the US based workforce in terms of US citizens and residents, of course. So these are things to consider. Hopefully these tips are helpful to you. Again, if you like access to our legal team, not just me, but anyone on our team to evaluate your candidate to see if that person qualifies for H1B, whether it's for this season or you maybe qualify for exemption and file later on, we're happy to do that. Just fill out this little quiz right here, freevisaquiz.com, and we'll be in touch with you soon. All right. Thanks, y'all. Have a great day and take care.